Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. I thought of an idea. I thought of something that perhaps is worth discussing. I thought that people have trust issues. You know, a human being. You can say a majority of their intellect is being used to figure out if they can trust the moment to continue on. Now, it's this situation that we are 8 billion creatures. We start off from our inner realms. That means every person is looking through their own eyes first. And after living through our own eyes, we notice that we are part of a species. We, in some sense, attain a collective identity as a social creature. Now, in order to move the body, the one's physical body, they have to trust it. Right now, I have to trust my voice when I speak. I have to trust that these bees won't go into my coffee as I'm speaking. Sorry guys, hold on, let me just cover my coffee. So you see, we trust, we require trust to move anything. If you want to write a sentence, you got to trust the pen. If you want to speak, you got to trust your voice. If you want to move, you got to trust your body. Now, if we want the whole thing to move, if we want the species to advance, that requires a trust in the species. And that's what I feel is missing. And this is such a huge problem, I would say, for human beings. It's one of those grand, I would say, Rubik's Cube of our time. That how can we, even though we are part of the same species, how can we generate a trust that doesn't destroy us? You see? It's very strange. It's as if we are like strangers on the same planet. I feel there will come a time where we will feel like family, the species. And it's simply because the conflicts are greatest events, the lessons that the human being has learned, has been learning from history, you can say, is internal. It's as if we have had species civil war, you know? And so there are dangers from inside a system that is maintained. Let us treat the human effort, the effort of all human beings, as a sort of global system. Now, inside this global system, there can be turbulence, and outside of it could be turbulence. Inside the global system, the turbulence is human beings fighting with each other. Outside of the global system is something else fighting with human beings. That means imagine suddenly all the animals on the planet became conscious suddenly to the level of the human being. And they were like, hey, human being, you think you could just eat all of us? You know, you think you can just kill all of us? And so imagine it was a sort of hilarious Hunger Games where all the animals and all the species were attacking the human species. And so we were defending our species from other species on our own planet, you know? But I am saying that this world is too weird for it to be this easy to linearize and think we know. This world has had great shamans, and the greatest work has never been done alone. I will tell you, nobody is alone, and anytime it's the case with speech in general, with any sort of effort. When it's just like, imagine fireworks, you know, when something happens, there's a light it gives off, and all the moths come. For me, this challenge of how do we get past trust? What is the value? For me, I'm a person who I would say, I do understand that there is a non-dual loving passivity that allows you. There are those human beings. Okay, here, let us say that there are advanced communicators and pilots. The advanced communicator must learn to trust the unknown. The pilot must learn to trust the known. This was something, a story I said in the previous episode, I believe, yesterday. I found myself speaking to the mayor of a town in, so my background is from Iran, and in 2000, I don't know what it was, 60, like I visited Iran, and then so from the capital of Iran, Tehran, if you drive like a couple hours, you go to the outskirts of kind of near the water and whatnot. And so I found myself, it wasn't just me alone, I was accompanying others. And I found it was me, my brother, and others, and we went to see this mayor of this town. This town, which was more like, you know, kind of like a village kind of setting, you know? And so the mayor of the town was this like guy in his, you know, late 30s, who was very well educated. In some sense, he looked like a teacher of a university. And so I remember we were there, and my brother asked a very interesting question. My brother asked a question. He said, he was studying sociology at the time. He said, what does society need? He asked the mayor. And the mayor turned around as if my brother had kind of asked like something real. You know? And the mayor said, people need trust. That's the issue. A lot of war, a lot of inefficiency, a lot of violence is because we are creatures living in a world we can't trust. And so if you're living in a society and you can't trust people, in some sense you can't work. It's simple as that. Do you know? That means, for example, something I see happening in certain Western countries, in some sense, of course I'm speaking from Canada. I live in Canada, but I could say something I've noticed, for example, generally in, let's say, some Western countries, is that, for example, the citizens of the nation are finding a distrust in the services of their nation. You see, it's something to maintain a nation is not an easy thing. To maintain society is not an easy thing. It may be easy in the sense that everybody does their own little thing in their own little bubble, and it's all good, and we're just here trying to pass the time by before our eyes close. Like if in that way, it becomes really easy to live. You know, the less you care, the easier you are. The more you care, the more you have to exert your free will to live in accordance to the system. Do you know? When it comes to certain philosophical views on life, I find myself having the freedom of the lion's roar. But in other situations, I feel honestly like a dolphin. Just like my way out of the situation, you know. Or like jumping in and out of water. Oh man. What I feel the point of what that mayor said was really is that's the missing piece. You see, we have advanced. We have in some sense found many technologies, many methods, many systems. I sometimes feel like people are born to add to systems sometimes, you know? In the subtitle, for whoever's listening, if you notice, I've written a prerequisite before salvation. I am not meaning the salvation per se in a religious context or in a specific. For me, the idea of salvation is the efficient win-win. It's as if like we are intelligent enough as a species to build a system that everybody can win, and think of it this way, that now our species is caught between win-lose. We're like, are we losing? Are we winning? You know? But imagine a civilization that cannot lose. It is advancing too quick. The moment it thinks it has lost, it, in some sense, there are others building the victory. And for me, honestly, these talks have only felt like I have kept the door open. That's it. I feel like a doorman when I speak. Like, welcome to the unknown, people, welcome. This trust can be countered. The counterattack of our species to its lack of trust of world has a solution. The prerequisite before salvation is caring for the true self before the true world. You know, that means, let's say you're a person and you're like, I want to live a true life. You know, I like truth. You're like, you know, let's say you're someone who loves truth. You know, they're like, hey man, do you believe in any truth? And I love truth. But the question is, does truth love you? You know? And so you can be a person and you could love truth, but in some sense, let us say, if we want to access truth, we have to be truth. It works like that in this realm. There's a reason Nikola Tesla was obsessed with vibrations and frequency. You know? There is a reason we have different radio channels, and similarly, we are thinking we are just one kind of person in a world that by the mere whim of attention can in the inner realms reanimate contextually. You know, the concept of life, it starts from an objective position. Right now, everything I see is technically a concept, you know, if I'm speaking about it. So, the context is where knowledge happens. Knowing is trust of the concept of the context it is in. That is it. There's no such thing as fixed knowledge, you know? The world changes too much. And if we are to live truly, I keep saying it in some of the talks, I say that it's like in this life, try to find your real karma. Before stepping out of karma, before trying to free yourself from the Buddhist self-imposed Aeonian incarnation cycle, you know, first wonder what is your real karma. Sometimes for me, karma is a remembrance. It's as if you cause something and the effect happens now, and you're like, holy shit, what does this mean, you know? And imagine you, if we were to entertain, you know, to make it easier to speak about it, I have to say a horizontal multidimensionality and a vertical multidimensionality. You can say, playfully, right now, it's a horizontal multidimensionality. We are thinking, we're journeying through time, like an arrow going from left to right, you know? But the vertical multidimensionality is a suggestion that in every moment in time, there has been various other moments connected. So think of it that in a horizontal line, the moment you add a vertical line, you know, that there's a point of intersection. That point of intersection is the soul. So think of it this way. When one opens their eyes in a world they have no clue, first you're trying to find the real self, then you're trying to find the real world. Right? That real self is you're trying to detach your karma from what you are not. That means many people may be like, why is this happening to me? But they don't realize that their attention is navigating potentially as image that they can never be. That means I don't know how many people still think they are a personality. I don't know how that's ever been possible. Your personhood is, it animates in accordance to the stimulus, environment, and your experiences. And the reason the species has trust issues is because we cannot see each other's eyes. Because if everybody was telepathic, there would be no trust issues. It's like the moment it's like there was something of distrust happening, everybody would see it and be like, buddy, we know what you're thinking, you know. So that's the thing, it's a level of transparency. So before truths, you can say what is true. The truth of the world is simultaneously the trust of the self, as the self is part of the world. So in this world, when you trust yourself, you have trusted a part of the world. That's an achievement. That's a big achievement. There was something in this world you felt comfortable with being. And so from the self comes the teachings of the world, and from the world come the teachings of the self. Anytime my attention goes to outside of me, I am to blame. Anytime my attention goes in the inner realms, the world is to blame, you know? You know? And so it's as if, when are we going to really experience the advanced civilization? If one thing people do in their life, aim for this, and it's a win-win thing. You lose nothing by trying to advance civilization. Just caring for that, you know. We are in this world once. What shall our great performance be? And let me tell you, the human being doesn't have energy to do everything. The bigger the effort of living becomes, the more, literally, the trust is proportional. That means if I was in a two-person game, that would be a sort of level of trust you require. If the person was in an 11-player game, like let's say you were on a soccer field, then you need a different level of trust. If you were in an 8-billion-player game, then you definitely need a different level of trust. Even the goals are different. The goalposts. So we have to find a way to make the species trust itself in advancing itself, to move beyond towards a vision where it never had the distrust. So technically, love and forgiveness are like a commander solving this problem, as if the universe were like, okay, lovers of the world, do something about trust on this planet. You know, and all the lovers in the world, the greatest love stories bloomed in history and whatnot, you know? We want to build a space where the individual can just make efficient chess moves. I can say I am a bit, I'll be honest guys, I'm a bit, when it comes to the individual, I am a bit sometimes heartless, and I don't know why. But when it comes to the collective, it's as if I can dismiss my own heartbeat. You know, it's all about what you see in the moment. If you see something more than more valuable than this way yourself perceives value, instantly you will exchange worlds for worlds. Because that is the nature of evolution. We seek the beyond. And so let me give you an example of what I mean, the heartlessness of the individual. Okay? Maybe that sentence, I mean, everything I say can be misinterpreted. That's why I have hope. What I mean by the heartlessness of the individual is that, again, go back to this analogy that it takes energy. It takes energy to be something. I mean, let's think of it this way. It takes energy to do something and then be defined by what you do. You know. So if I think about collective victory, if right now I forget myself, like when I come to give these talks, it might sound strange, but I am seeing something so much more bigger than myself. So the self is very easy to comment on. But moments or states of mind where I am pushed into being just my attention is on individualism, I see myself before the world first. So when you see yourself before the world first, that's what I mean by the heartlessness, you know? And if you see the world first before yourself, that is when your heart is open, you know? Where you don't become a god of your own expectations, you know? And judge yourself mid movement. Trust me, I like it. There's moments where I use the turtle strategy. I just go into literally in my outer realms. I lock down my outer realms and I just go and, you know, ponder in the inner realms. You know, but it's nature. The best thing that I have heard in this life was, I believe it was from, I think it was Rumi, Attar, or Shams, one of these three people. And the quote was, if you want a friend that is flawless, you would be friendless. And so it's another way of saying, if you want a world with no problems, you would be worldless. And all those who have entered non-duality have understood this. That the grace of God, that the grace of nature is non-dual. A mind is not bound to a location. The location is dependent on the mind. But in front of our eyes, the mind is dependent on the location. This is why independence and confidence are inner. They come from within you rather than without you. Sometimes in life, if the order is the only thing that has meaning, you will miss out on every lesson the chaos has to give. You know? I feel it is impossible to get over the trust issues of the species unless the species chooses to co-create. That means, think of it this way, that when, let's say there's a person A is sitting in the park and person B comes to that park, okay? Person A and B, when they speak, when anybody speaks, this should be known, it is like two I wanted to say two hobbits moving past the Shire, but I'll use a different excuse me. Person A is in room A, world A. Person B is in world B. Both person A and person B see the park. They are in the physical park. They virtually see their outer realms similar. Right now, I'm speaking to you in the outer realms. But when the moment person, excuse me. Person A and B, by acknowledging that the outer realms is the empty piece of paper, they both have to build a third realm. You have to co-create a third inner realm. That's how communication happens. Even though I remember seeing a TED talk where they were showing like the analogy of communication is something you throw at something at someone, and they throw something at you. I would say the best way of perceiving communication, like they add something to that ball and then they throw it back at you. So that was the metaphor. So I would see the best way being that communication is an empty page. That means you cannot communicate to another human being properly until both of you can see the empty page, right? And then both begin drawing on this empty page, based on how their communication shows that each being's eyes are approaching. And maybe their stomachs too. You know, we don't just hunger food. We hunger living in a way where we feel something changed. And we get bored when our inner realms want the outer realms to change too fast, faster than they are. And we get inspired when the outer realms are changing quicker than the inner realms. It's like a call of action. It is like the bells of the kingdom being heard and all in the kingdom marching. Do you know, for me, it's the advanced civilization. If I could somehow carve it in stone, in historic stone, I would say it's like, I see it as if like literally the advanced civilization is the peak of a mountain, and every being is climbing this mountain slowly at their own pace, seeing more and more that the world is more and more. I have witnessed my brain apologizing at certain moments of my life to my heart. And just like, I imagine you are the silent witness of the relationships of your own. And so it's as if the heart has just been silent. The heart doesn't get offended. The heart is the most hardest working thing ever. The person is not the hardest working, you can say, phenomenon. It's like love learns beyond personality. Love is a teaching beyond the person, beyond personality. Or let me say it like this: the heart learns beyond the personality. The brain learns through the personality. The soul never was a personality. 3 dimensions. I will tell you, there's 3 dimensions. We have been treating it like it's one space-time continuum. Beautiful. We went as far as the 3 dimensions, then we didn't give a shit. Like we went up to 4 dimensions, then we didn't give a shit. Then we stopped wondering about the mysteries that could surpass any sort of strict fixation or the knowledge of the species has. It's like, imagine human beings were all wrong. That's sometimes what I feel, that if the person becomes a follower, you fall into the mistakes of others. But if you become a follower of your real self, you actually care for the antenna that you are. It's as if first you learn from teachers inside the world. Then when you are surpassed that, you learn from teachers outside. Then you realize the outside is inside, and you realize every teacher you have seen has been the attempt of your brain to move somewhere. Knowledge is movement. The absence of it is no movement. And it's like we're on thin ice, and this thin ice is made of movement and sound. And all of knowledge is on this thin ice. The counterattack of the species to distrust of the world is to reinterpret the world. That means I am encouraging people not to be liars, but definitely feel you have been lied to. Lied to by what? By your own past. That your past attempted. That means there was a scene in this show. It was this Japanese comic books have a metaphysical dimension that Western comic books don't. And so there was this scene in this anime where there was a character, there was this girl, and she had an ability to evoke what they called in the show a familiar, a nature spirit. Do you know? And she had an ability where she animated these 2 white foxes, like the spirits of these 2 white foxes that were here to serve her, right? And there was a situation where these foxes were animations of, or they were evocations of the spirit of nature from her own mind in the show. So the foxes had a telepathic connection with the evoker, you know? By the way, anybody who hears a cough, excuse it. It's just the air canal from the nose is, blocked. So that's why the cough comes. So what happens is these 2 white foxes, they are at the service of this character in this anime show. this girl, and this girl the foxes are waiting for the girl to command them. Then the girl, she does something where she gets a selfish thought, and she doesn't want to help someone, right? And the foxes, the two evoked nature spirits, look at her and they're like, what is wrong with the state of your heart? And they want to attack her. Do you know? That means the state of her heart could be felt by all that was evoked, technically, and for her. So anyways, what happens is the foxes attack her, right? Instead of listening to her, they attack her, and then somebody comes and saves her and whatnot. And then the next time she brings the foxes, she knows that she evoked the foxes. The foxes are not here to judge her. She's here to tell the foxes what to do because she brought them. She evoked them. You know, this is different than parent-child thing. Okay, this is what I'm saying is like, think of a Japanese folklore. Psychology based on Japanese folklore. So, anyways, in that situation, the next time she evokes the foxes look at her and they're like, the state of your heart is messed up. And then she shouts and she says, I have brought you forth. Help, you know, or whatever she says. She gives, I don't remember what her command. I don't think it was help. She commands the foxes, the nature spirits, to go forth and assist her, right? And the nature spirits, the two foxes who can speak, they look at each other and they're like, oh, she snapped out of it. Do you know what I mean? So it was like the foxes realized, it's as if pressure finds you because you haven't realized you can release it. You know? The weak get hit on the head constantly. I'm telling you, you act weak in this life smashes you. It slams you down. Why? Because it's an allowance thing. It's as if the mind has given that permission. You know? And there was something incredible there when the human being realizes we deserve the efficiency of this world. And it's just that, imagine you were a child and you were just given the lesser option first and you never knew there was a better option. You know, truth, one can say, may feel like an earthquake, but it's not an earthquake that's breaking the world. It's an earthquake that's fixing it. Can you imagine a species too joyous to fail? I remember I write stories often. I remember I worked on this story. The story's not finished, but I'll tell you the idea in it. I created for the first time, I'm like, what have we not seen in history? And I realized we have never seen a laughing army. Laughing army, an army that has weapons, but they never use their weapons. They all go and they all laugh. Do you know? They all laugh so much that all the other armies that want to attack them, do you see, they hear their laughter and they stop fighting. It's as if a conqueror who decided to, in some sense, advance the kingdom through humor. Can you imagine, like, a king? You know, a king that was like, the general of the king, sir, the armies are ready. The king's like, listen, we're gonna use jokes. And the general was like, what do you mean, sir? What do you mean we're gonna use jokes? And the point is, that which is energetically more liberating wins. Just like how you can say, bubbles, let's say a kettle that in a glass boiling kettle, you see the bubbles kind of rise to the top, you know. Sometimes it's not about an intellectual sponge-like absorption of the world. I would say reality is that the intellect is a tool. Your existence is a tool for an unknown experiential force. You know, that means that was really when my fear of my own personality dropped, when I realized I am a force of nature before I am a personality in the world. So when you can find contentment with the force of nature, and it's you know, I'm not trying to say it's easy or hard. I'm just saying that sometimes in nature, like the tree realizes where it is. I am rooted in creaturehood right now as a being, but my being is not a creature. None of us are a creature. We are a field. It's just we have no idea how to speak about it because the world and it's just based on objects again. So the trust issue will be solved first of all by a multidimensionalizing of the species and its story. You know? And so I thought about it. It's like, how do I get 8 billion inventors to start inventing or trying to invent? And you know how I realized the solution is? We have to wonder about what is the greatest invention. And so human beings, it's not like we can suddenly trust each other. It's that we have to wonder about some greatness ahead of our time. Not something of that one story can own, but 8 billion eyes are walking on this road. And for me, the healthiest and I find safest and the most important idea is the advanced intelligence. The castle in the sky. Is the afterlife of the mind. You see, as an object, it's like, what am I authorized to be in existence? When I wonder as a mind, what am I authorized? Years ago, my authorization was very less because I didn't care. It's as if like an employee who doesn't care about their workspace, it's like they are less authorized. You know, they automatically become less authorized. They are banished from the glory of the company. But a being who is responsible for their space and advances that responsibility, and beings can be responsible for space, not necessarily in accordance to time. That means I would be like, if I had a, like, of course I haven't, maybe in the future, such a moment will come, but freedom is the source of creativity. But discipline is the catalyst for, discipline is like, gives shape. You know? So, I don't know, it's a balance. The mind can divide itself. Pretty much what I feel has been doing, the mind has been doing, it has been accepting the world, breaking it. Accepting it, literally, it's like, there was this Lonely Island video on YouTube. I threw that, excuse my language, it was like, threw that shit on the ground, you know? And the whole video, the guy was just throwing stuff on the music video, he was just throwing stuff on the ground, you know? And so that's kind of life. Our senses give us something and we throw it. Or there's some people who they catch and they drop. So those people who are I consider them very advanced communicators. When they're in a moment where there's anger, disturbance, they catch the anger, then put the ball down on the ground. They don't throw it back, you know? Patience is the honor of the mind. Patience is the older brother of endurance. That will be our companion at the end. You know, I can tell you it is true. A person does something for a while, they get defined by it. So one can say the challenge of any long-term project is fighting how the brain develops patterns. So we require a society where people are free enough to find, discover, and bring the new. So a society where people are free enough to bring the new, and a society where people are disciplined enough to maintain efficiency's momentum, whether individual or collective. So I'm saying that it's no longer like as simple as telling a person to take care of yourself or be a good person. It is about in every moment a creature in space and time can re-relate those 2 points. The weirdest thing about time, the biggest clue we can have about how unnatural the idea of time is how we weren't born wearing a watch. You know? Can you imagine we were born literally with on our hand and our skin there was a clock? Do you know? There were literally veins underneath the skin like a clock handle. Do you know? And it was part of our biology or something. You know, there was literally, we were born with watches on our wrist, you know? But this, not mechanical watches, like purely biologically evolved for it, you know? Trust has to come with, or truth arrives through great moments of trust. And so every human being should just in their mind have this view that whenever, think of it this way, right now it's not even a situation where you can tell people really search something, you know. Now we're at a state of the world where when we talk about a better world, people are like, yo, who are you, man? Mind your own business. You know, our greater advancement has become everybody minding their own business, not realizing our business is everything. That is the true responsibility of a species. That means if we are the most advanced species on this planet, we should act like it. And are we acting like it? And anytime a human being behaves violently, just go stand in the mirror and be like, why are you living in a house? Go live in the forest like a Tarzan. Do you know? You know, that means that if violence continues, it's like being an animal in the city. Go be an animal in the forest, you know? Go fight, go be violent to violent animals, you know? This world is like money has blinded the character of human beings from realizing it deserves a new view. Do you know that literally world peace, theoretically, is possible in an instant, but it has to do with 8 billion beings changing where their attention is on? You know, all this thing with the species having trust issues, in an instant it can totally realign. We can build something that has never been built. Do you know? We can, as a species, use the idea of communication, the next great chapter of our evolution, and use communication and build, and in some sense, a personal identity with a global communication. That means for me, a species is as advanced as the species realizes how much it is also being in the world. So if an alien comes down, let's say in the future, and the alien shakes hands with our president, you know, or just with some leader of humanity, you know, I would look at that alien and I would just be like, okay, let's say there was, okay, I don't know, let's say there was there was a leader of humanity there, and somehow I was there, I don't know, I was walking to the grocery store and the leader of humanity was there, and the whole alien thing was happening right like a meter beside me. I would look at the leader of humanity and be like, ask it if it feels, if how it understands the world. That is the question you need to ask. How do you look at the world? Right? We're trying to find the inner realms of that alien, if that alien comes, right? And so, if the alien thinks it's an advanced alien, we'd be like, oh god, this alien has an ego. Somebody bring a Muji lecture. This alien has an ego, you know. Somebody find Eckhart Tolle, you know. But if the alien is silent and touches us to reveal to us its pure being, that's honesty, you know. That means if we got as a species so advanced and we went on another planet and we were trying to make contact and we were the advanced aliens, we would be honest. We would be like, yo, this is what we are. What are you? Do you know? And that's how I would say it would begin. Where we don't need just an honesty with people. Oh my God, that is so basic. It's like we need an honesty with the world, the universal sector that's living. You think an individual can be alive, but not the universe. Yet it is from the universe the life arrives. We are arrivals of cosmic potential classified in the limited way the eyes have been exposed to so far. The most beautiful view is to realize you have no idea who you are and you have no idea what the world is, and this is the honesty. This is the honesty of a multidimensional being with itself. Because if you don't have honesty, you become manipulated. That's as simple as that. And first you become manipulated by yourself, then you become manipulated by others. Simple as that. You see, one cannot, for example, hit someone without hurting themselves. Do you know, without hitting themselves? Anything the person does, even if you, when it comes to, like some people in the chat section, sometimes they have, you know, all sorts of comments have come, like weather, you know, and sometimes when there has been, for example, you know, a comment that's been like an insult, I'm like, wait, how does that, it's like, does that person realize the idea arose from them? That means if there's two people in a room and one of them turns around and says, hey man, you're a bad person, that person's mind has brought forth the idea first. Or that moment where the first person says, it's your fault, that person, the idea of it could be their fault, has arose to them first. Do you know? And it can be said, I think this is the difference between blind love and real love. Blind love sees itself, loves itself. Real love has learned that there is another world. And to love another world means you might have to forget how you're loving this one. We are mystics here. The advanced communicator is just the modern word I'm giving for it, because that's what mysticism was. The mystics, I consider, were the most advanced human beings on this planet. The rishis that landed the Vedic wisdom treasures. Every culture has a treasure. Every culture has done something of a global heroic worth. If people in cultures, they find that, you know. And so, let's say, before we think about how does the species trust itself, we have to think about why is the species distrusting itself, because we can trust as much as we want. If we also don't get rid of the distrust, we will fall into that same pothole, you know. So we distrust the realm because of our temporal nature. We distrust the realm Because we cannot see the mind of others, we distrust the realm because literally everything's hovering in emptiness. Like we don't even know what to trust. So we can say we distrust because we are uncomfortable with the unknown. And when you become comfortable with the unknown, this world becomes your, you may feel like it's your home, but not the home of your known self. It has been the home of your unknown self. And this may sound strange. Let me tell you what I mean by this. You see, knowledge is a tiny percentage. Knowledge is like the tip of a small iceberg, and there's no other iceberg, imagine. We don't see, it's too far. And so there's the tip of an iceberg, and we are standing on the tip of the iceberg, but we have a choice to be the ocean. And that's where playfulness comes from. Believe it or not, the unknown. The unknown is the God of the known. And we dance in halls made of language, not realizing the real world. Do you know I am just a voice, just a sound, and your attention is bringing the world to life. It's remarkable. And that's the only way I can wake up and give another talk, really. The moment I think I know it, there's nothing to talk about. The moment I think, oh yeah, this is it. You know, I see it. You know, this one photo was truth for me. Great. I accepted. I put a, literally, let me tell you what a belief is. A belief is taking having those old school cameras that prints out a photograph of some moment of experience, and then putting that photograph on a blindfold, between the blindfold and your eyes, and putting a blindfold on and walking in the world feeling you see reality. To realize we're not a thought, that is the next, I would say that is the philosopher's task. The philosophers are here to find, like, let me tell you, to be honest, the way academia has gone forth, it has to build in like an A-team. It has to build, like how there was Avengers, you know, the movie Avengers, where there were like all these different kinds of like able beings, right? So it's as if like there has to be an Avengers for all the branches of knowledge. We have to find the trunk that holds all branches of knowledge. Because what I'm trying to do with my speech is actually to connect my inner realms to the outer realms. So it's in some sense a trust in the unknown. A comfort in the unknown can lead to trust, collective trust. I don't know how you can trust a collective individually. You have to trust yourself conditionally in the collective. And so I'm telling you, there is so much more emotions. There is so many ways to look at everything we have looked at so far. And so one way we can surpass the trust issues being like, okay, we had trust issues. It's a new moment. Let's see who we are now. You know? Now, there is something I would share. For me, where I was born in this world and just pretty much this life, I couldn't ignore the Abrahamic traditions and their ideology. And to give a comment actually on the idea of salvation. You see, salvation is this strange, kind of think of it this way, I'm giving a theological comment. There's this challenge that man in the Abrahamic lens, all ideas are really lenses. And that's really what a method is a lens of an approach. But let's say in the Abrahamic method, and through the Abrahamic lens, there was God, and God was the ultimate truth, and God was in heaven. Do you know? And God made man out of clay, and with his breath imbued life in man. Then God commanded man to, in some sense, say the names of, I would say it pretty much gave it a mind. First it gave it a body. God gave man a body, then it gave man a mind, you know. And there is something about the Abrahamic religion that feminists may not like. But anyways, the idea of man came, and then a counterfeiting of man came. That means like anti-man came, but not anti. You know, like we have matter and we have antimatter. But the antimatter doesn't really have a personality to say anything to the matter, and the matter doesn't have a personality to say anything. You see, when it comes to antimatter and matter, right? Same like, so it was like counter forces. It was literally an engine, right? It was as if like it was a dualistic access. In order for us to exist in a dualistic world, there are required to be two, in some sense, perhaps one soul, two beings, you know. Now, what happens, in some sense, is that man is given a test, and man fails this test. The creation of God, God's creation, fails its own God's test by listening to the ignorance of a serpent, you know, to the it's as if the archetype of I would say a fallen angel is as if the fallen angel couldn't accept that it was wrong, so it had to make the whole world wrong. But now check this out. What happens is that man makes a mistake and God does not forgive him. In religions where it says the all-forgiving God, it also says that God did not forgive man. Now just listen to me, whoever's listening. I'm speaking in a theological lens, through a theological lens. So what happens is excuse me. When man fell, then after a long point, a message came. A message came from not just after, in some sense, man fell, alongside others. And as man fell, imagine I say man fell again. we fell to a position where a message came that we have to rise again and we have to go towards the truth. So pretty much man, in some sense, wasn't forgiven, and then after a point was told that you can be forgiven, right? And so that's where the idea of salvation comes from, a source that could not forgive man. So that means technically we had to make a mistake. Now, here's the thing. We don't know if mistakes are good for us or bad for us. We, as from the human perspective, say a mistake was bad. How could God not forgive man, then forgive man again? Do you know? It's as if we have seen an example where God did not forgive us just because we bit into an apple that we knew nothing about. Do you know? It's as if in some sense, I do understand that from a theological sense, the metaphor is a suggestion of going to a disaccord with the divine will. Because as you look from, when you look at these archetypes, if you just thought that religion was a mysterious language, do you know, it's a language that it's like, okay, what does this language mean? It's like hieroglyphics, and you looked at the archetypes, you would see in some sense in it, you would see that the archetypes of the angelic, the archangels, are in some sense beams of the sun. What that means is it's as if it's like on one level you can see the whole religious story as a metaphor for the sun, the fight for good and evil night and day, you know, ignorance and bliss, walking in the world deaf, dumb and blind. When it's dark you see nothing, and when there's light you see everything. So it's as if light was used definitely as a fundamental metaphor of the sun as a metaphor for God. You know, now the whole point of this is that the light beam is the angel. The difference between angel and man archetypally is that the angel, except one angel in the theological setting, all the angels are the divine will. Now that one angel man thinks is not in accordance to the divine will, but it technically is. Because in some sense the choice was never the creation is existing in the attention of the creator, the same way your reflection exists to you in the mirror. Therefore, what I'm trying to say is that even though man can attempt an algorithm for salvation, whatever you give that whatever image you give your salvation, you know, for a thirsty person, water is salvation. For a hungry person, food is salvation. For a sick person, health is salvation. Do you know? It's as if your fears that are unconditionally holding you, to get rid of them is your salvation, maybe. For some people, some methodologies and schools of thought, they have an obsession over time. I would say certain modern religions, there is an obsession over time. Certain ancient religions, they were trying to see beyond time. Because if you were a being from the beginning, beyond time, what are you doing in time? So if the instruction book is in time, about the timeless, there's an error. Literally imagine a Windows error pops up, right? Your intuition is like, access denied, bro. So it becomes one of those situations where we have to become honest. We have to have an honesty where, in some sense, the creation is not fighting the creator archetype. The creation archetype is honestly going forth into being like, why is it here? That means it's this poetic situation. Imagine this hypothetical situation. A person saw God, and the first thing that came out of their voice, the first way their voice animated, it's like, why do you do this? Why? Because some people, for them, heaven is a location. Some people want to go in they believe they have houses in heaven. And it's not that it's wrong. There are hidden dimensions, but it's as if the rainbow is making you not see the one light. And so let us not make the prism into a prison. The biggest clue in theology is where was earth made? God banished man. Man fell. We know that man fell from heaven. But where was earth made? And so the point is, there is only heaven. Earth is in heaven. We have fallen in heaven still. So technically, think of yourself having a thought of some character. Now think of that character realizing it has never left your mind. Imagine reality gives you what you input into it. If you say, I want love, it's like, all right, let me check the inventory. Okay, I got some love, gives you love. If you say, I want hate, then it checks it. It's like, okay, I got some hate, I'll give you hate. You know? If you want doubt, it'll give you doubt. Whatever your attention glorifies, it's like the karmic shopkeep gives you. Now, let's say you go to this karmic shopkeep and you're like, I want truth. Forget every personality, emotion, archetype. The one and only presence of this nature. What is it? What is the ultimate? And the proper response of that shopkeep should be laughter. That means anytime man speaks to the lords of karma, their speech is laughter. Their response is laughter. If man speaks and the lords of karma are silent, that means you have been heard. Then you just look at your own karma and you read the universe through that way. You know, that's more of a, you can say, shamanic approach. The shaman has through an insight beyond time, accesses a sight that is no longer in a sight in time. That means unless you realize you're not a thought, you're playing around with your metaphysics. And you could be someone who has no idea what metaphysics is, or you could be someone who has kind of behaviorally engaged metaphysics. But let me tell you, honesty with self. Because honesty with self means to begin at the simple principles of how your own psychology animated in the world. It's as if this person, they were like, what are you doing? And the person's like, I'm reverse engineering back to my earliest memory. And they're like, okay, so did you do it? And the person's like, yeah. And then they're like, what did you find? And the person's like, I realized I was nothing before I was everything. And the person's like, okay. okay. So what does that mean? And that's what it means. What it really means is that you reverse engineer back to the last moment where you were an idea to realize you never were. Experience is the living. Consciousness doesn't belong to a biological body's mouth noises. And yet they are conditioning people to feel there is right and wrong, so in some sense there will never be salvation. You know, so in some sense, I'm saying the way we can build heaven on earth is realizing earth is in heaven. And in a secular way, earth is in the heavens, you know? And of course, there is this quote, I think it was, I don't know who it was, Galileo who said it, or somebody who said it, where a very profound scientific mind said it, where it's like, religions tell you how to go to heaven. Science tells you how the heavens go. So if science is telling you how the heavens go, that means attention is on the heavens first before on earth. We are looking at the macrocosmic picture to recalibrate our microcosmic picture. So from the microcosmic picture, endless update, endless advancement. From the macrocosmic picture, all right, we're at the top. How do we now? It's as if we are learning to be our bodies first, then we're learning to be our own minds. So it's like, do you know what I mean? It's as if something, you know how a bubble, like again from like a boiling kettle, like the bubble just goes up to the air and it becomes inconceivable. Similarly, it's like that. You know, the steam becomes inconceivable. We are right now conceivable. Right now, imagine I'm talking to you, I'm a drop. Okay, but I'm a drop that suddenly realized behind my eyes I'm a river. So now I'm like one leaf of, I'm like a branch where this lifetime is one leaf of it that's happening. The other leaves are like in one other leaf, I experience the realm as a purely geometrical dimension. That means there is no words, no sounds, no people, nothing, just living animate geometry. A realm where geometry is alive. You know, I'm that guy like Frankenstein, you know, it's like looking at geometry though, it's alive! Or like a mathematician that's mad at the story of a normality that was never there. History is changing. In a changing world, it's like, what are you trying to hold on to? Therefore, our relationship with objects has to change, and that will allow our relationship with subjects to change. And once our relationship with subjects are changed, we realize that the will of the unknown viewer, I'm saying something that I don't think it's often shared, but I feel that there was a subjective evolution, that we are actually two bodies. We don't realize it. We have a body in an invisible room. Everybody does. It's you know, that mind is a room. Right now, these words, they have image to me. Sometimes I can see their letters. Sometimes I could see an image and stretch it. Do you know? This is all that stretching, all that visualization. It's like where memory is happening. It's like that is the inner realms. And because our psychology is based on story, and stories cannot exist without time and space, we have created a system of knowledge that we can never know anything beyond time and space. And so the materialists keep us in it. The immaterialists are like, hey, something's fishy, you know, and we are realizing that the language eventually will break down. Like a t-shirt that you're growing to you're like hulking up, you know, you know, in a moment, in an instant, and so like you're ripping the t-shirt. So the way we think about life, the story we're telling ourselves is like is a t-shirt that's getting too tight for the species to wear, and the species can't breathe. This t-shirt, this story that we're just this meaningless animal, it has to end. You know, the meaningful animal has to arise. And the meaning of the animal, in the most poetic sense, I would say, this was a diamond I found in this show called Shingeki no Kyojin, where there was a commander and he's like, life is not meaningless. Our meaning is found in the, sorry, what was this? Our lives have meaning because we live for those who will find the meaning one day. There is no linguistic ownership anymore, guys. There is no owners to a changing world anymore. The moment we realize that, a dimension of humility opens up. That dimension of humility is making you, as an experiencer, prioritize being natural, and then that means it's like, I learned this really from the Zen masters. If you're not peaceful in the inner realms, you can't be peaceful in the outer realms. Simple as that. If there's a storm behind your eyes, it doesn't matter how sunny it is in front of your eyes. You won't see the lightness. You won't notice the warmth of the day. And one last thing to say about the theological lens. Man is God's responsibility. From the theological view. Therefore, there is no such thing as the creation, because the Creator is moving everything. You see? That means either man is in the room first, then God, or God is in the room first, then man. From the religious angle, God is in the room first, then man, so there's no need for analyzing life, processing life, because there's in some sense, it's not your responsibility. So you can say, you become God's responsibility in the religious framework. So you actually don't need to look at yourself. It's a dismissal of self. It's a submission. It's a renunciation of individualism, so that instead of you are moving yourself, the world is moving you. I am saying that instead of having firm beliefs, and there's people in their inner realms, you can believe whatever you want. In the outer realms, it's important what you believe or disbelieve, because it has an influence on everybody else. You know? That means, like, I find even a giant, perhaps, I don't want to say problem, but something of concern, is that it's interesting to me how many people are traveling and immigrating to different countries, but they are still living as if they were in their old country, right? And it's not that there's something wrong, there's freedom to do everything, but in some sense, it defeats the purpose of the psychological permission of the new space. So you see, we have to see, there is something that in religious texts it says that because God is the prime mover of the universe in the religious angle, only God knows what's in your heart. That means you can't hide anything from something that has created you. It's not even a surveillance thing. Do you know? It's just literally, we are that. So technically, you know, they asked Swami Krishnananda, of course he's not from a monotheistic tradition, but he said religion is God remembering himself. That means I will, people can write in the chat section if I'm wrong, but I am telling you, all those people seeking mystical experiences, deep down, they're trying to be God. But when you become God, there is no you. So you can never be God, because there's no you to be God. Do you see? It's just a reverse engineering back to a moment where before language there was just the breathing moment. Simple. That means for me, my breath is an application where I know, I've literally seen too many action movies, I know that my breath is like the last program. Imagine like every person is like a smartphone, and this smartphone has a bunch of applications open. Now I know that my breath is the last application. So you might not believe it, but that's an application of program that the moment I enter the conscious waking state, it is it's how I wield the antenna. To create and design an enjoyable and incredible humanity is the goal. That's like common sense. We want individuals to succeed, we want collectives to succeed. What is the ultimate collective success? You know, a system where, just like how people have nationalism, patriotism, their personalities are in some sense animated in accordance to the events of their ecosystem, So we have to now usher in a sort of invisible global archetype of the human being. That means literally philosophers all around the world, people who I'll say it like this, advanced communicators, the pilots are already in the field, but the advanced communicators on this planet, all of them should in some sense wonder, because really the issue is, like, let's say a person has a belief. I'll give you an example. Let's say you're sitting on a chair and in front of you on a park, and someone comes and says, hey man, did you know behind this bench you're sitting on, there is literally, like a dragon sleeping, Okay, let's say the person says there's a yin yang tattooed kind of like, imagine like a dragon where you drew a vertical line from its head to its tail, and then it was literally the yin yang symbol with its legs and I don't know, wings and whatever, And so imagine the person said there's this kind of yin yang dragon behind you, and so imagine I'm sitting on the bench and I'm like, okay, I believe you, or I'm like, okay, I don't believe you. But imagine I say, okay, I believe you. Now I just sit there. I don't move. I believed, but I didn't move. Nothing changed. That means it was literally like a dialogue. When you believe something, it's literally, okay, you wore language. Your mind wore a specific language. What happened? Only when you turn around. So horizontally, what is a belief is like sitting on that chair, and then you get up from the chair and you're like, what is behind me? What is this? I'm alive once. Let me see what's going on. We have to be, I'm saying, like, we have to first treat life in the inner realms like a battlefield, in the outer realms like a beautiful garden. In the outer realms, we must just plant genius designs. And when I say genius, what I mean by genius is the way Albert Einstein defines it, where it is the intersection of two worlds that no one has ever seen any interconnectivity between. So it's technically multidimensional. It's around what that it's sculpting through the unknown multidimensional witness, or the unknown witness of the dimensions of your life. To help the world, we have to be willing to at least be able to imagine its victory. And that's what's missing. People are not attempting to envision collective victory. People are not wondering about that Xbox achievement unlocked kind of thing that will happen the moment we build an advanced civilization. Can you imagine the moment a self-sustaining advanced civilization, peaceful, and the more peace there is, the less shy genius is. The more freer, powerful the artists feel. I'm telling you, I'll say it on a national level, any nation who encourages their artists, that means if there was the amount of military budget going for like a nation that went for artists, if nations started to, I wrote something about this in my science fiction, if nations started to artistically compete, it's like nations did not want to show their power, strength, authority. It's like it's like nations are like all in the Earth's classroom, like kids in a classroom, and it's like they're acting tough, And history is pretty much like war, and everything is like national bullying. It's like a group fight has begun. The whole classroom has fought, Imagine a classroom with a child from every nation of the world. Or every nation built an android that had everything about their culture somehow processed, you know. Okay, maybe that's too far, but I'm saying though, the point is, art is how a species updates. And it all has to do with how the sensory perception is being accepted. So it's as if like universal intelligence is the ocean and we will return to it. And so rather than the concept of death, I think we should call it the death return. Or we should call it a death gate. You know, birth and death, we should treat it as doorways, as portals, as gates. Gates of pure experiential transition. That means imagine somebody, for example, like the shamans in the Amazon trying ayahuasca and like I don't know, some tea, some psychedelic tea, and they would in some sense experience something beyond. This is, imagine your body now is entering that experience. And life is it's either an artificial theater performance or it is the real deal. This is it. This is truth. How nature is being. It's as if inside the truth the illusion has been simulated. That's why once there is no illusion. So it's like for the art, imagine there's a canvas and there is an okay, imagine a paintbrush becomes conscious in the middle of a master painter drawing painting something, you know, and the paintbrush becomes conscious and the paintbrush stops and the master painter just stops for a moment, and the paintbrush looks at the master painter and is like, hey, what am I doing here? You know, why am I being painted? Why are the forces of nature animating nature? You know? And so the master painter looks at the paintbrush and says, listen, trust and you will discover your trust your moment, and you will discover what your purpose was after you have fully drawn it. Right? So the way I'm looking at life is that it doesn't have a snapshot photo answer. It's the whole thing is the answer. It's a journey. So you gotta actually maintain a journeyer level, solo journeyer level, and then build dimensions upon it. And of course, where your attention goes, it depends. You know, for me, I would say it's been kind of strange the way my life has gone, where it's like when I was a kid, it was like I would just communicate to people. Now, for me, the whole world is literally like become a sort of communication where every moment I'm like, what is nature trying to say by how it's happening? Like, what is nature doing? You know, imagine nature was something you loved, you know? You loved nature. But you, in the middle, or suddenly saw that which you love behaving in a way that wasn't love. It's like the shock of revelation, where it's an emotional avalanche. of truth actually returning to the void. Now, you can say the theist and the atheist are on the 0-1 level. It's the caught in the first duality matrix. I should say matrix doesn't. The first duality simulation. But there's way more. It's literally like there is three. Duality is 1/4 of what is going on in this world. The other three is the void, the singular, then the duality, then the infinite. And it's a ring. They spiral back. They circle back. So that means when you are in oneness, you have two doorways. You either go towards duality, which is air, or you go towards non-existence. Okay, where you go back into the void. Okay, if you're in the singular mindset. So all those people in oneness, you are either gonna slip off into duality, or you're gonna slip off into the void. Right? These are the options. I would say in just a model I have seen. I'm just one person talking. So I entertain these ideas, but but if you're in duality, if you have completely are in a sort of dualistic level, then oneness is a route, is an exit for you, or infinity. And if you're the infinite, for example, the gods in Vedic thought in Brahma Loka, the world of the gods, if you are infinite, you have two options. You go back, you slip into duality, or you go back into the void. And if you're the void, two options. You either slip into the infinite, or you slip into the singular. This model, I call it Ring of the Absent Heaven. It's really anybody who perceives these four dimensions, I would say, for your inner realms, you become an advanced communicator. Now, the teaching beyond the advanced communicator for the pilot is that the unknown moves the known, so that beyond these any sort of desire for an outcome in any of these four-dimensional modalities, that means you have no opinion on the void. You have no opinion on oneness. You have no opinion on duality. You have no opinion on the infinite. You reach a point where you actually are no longer in need of a condition to be something. Your being becomes unconditional. Like, for example, like, again, the Japanese comic books are doing wonders. You know? There was this character named Goku where he attains Ultra Instinct, a state where he knows like he is the destiny of his own movement before the movement. Pretty much the simplest way to see it is we are literally we have an access to an objective dimension where we're a creature, we can go physically build things, or we can in some sense on a, you can say mind, in the mind's room build things. So we contribute, every person alive is either right now serving the body of the advanced civilization or serving the mind of the advanced civilization. A professor in a university in Harvard, for example, is serving the mind of civilization. You know, like an incredible, let's say, construction team who builds, for example, like the I don't know, the construction team that built the Eiffel Tower, or the construction team that built like Burj Khalifa, you know, or those two towers in Malaysia. right? So it's as if like there was a force. Those were physical contributions. It's like on some level, we want yeah, the health of the physical dimension of our civilization, and also the health of its mind. And so these are, I'm just trying to see how we can just counter the trust issues. Because even for me, don't think like this, the way the system is designed is that anytime a human being enters a new space, they have to be a new self. And so if the attention is, you can say, caught in the inner realms, like there has been times, moments where someone has done something and it has made me angry. Like in front of me, someone has they were trying to do something, they were doing it slow or they were doing it wrong. I don't know what it was, but it was, I remember just there was this anger. There was this inner realm, my inner realms. I felt like my whole body was on fire, you know? It was literally in my inner realms. There was this kind of not like that intense, but I was like angry. But in the outer realms, I was just very simple, just very simple in the outer realms. And it was maybe it's the discretion. Maybe we need patience and incredible patience. We have to patiently strive towards the mirror of truth. Fearlessly. Because there's no point. It's like anything the person fears, you're a temporary being. Everything is temporary. And it's intense, but it's like if this, so pretty much we are literally, there's nothing to fear. It's as if either the wax of the candle melts and the light of the candle flame goes out, or the candle wax melts and the light of the candle flame is still there. And if the light of the candle flame was still there, there was nothing ever to be lost. It was as if you were not losing the world was losing. There's this saying, I don't know from what culture it is, but the saying says, when the child is born, the world laughs and the child cries. That means the people are happy, they celebrate, And so when the child, the story is when the child grows up and becomes a man. So it's like when the man dies, the world cries, and the child laughs. That means we are a traveler. This is like a station. This world is a bus station. And we don't have the responsibility to realize that there is way more going on, and it has to, because that is what novelty means. That's what, when I look at the idea of an invention, it is the emergence of the potential that was already there. It's like in any moment, anything can be reconnected. The dots can be reconnected at any time. And so I think the issue with trust is really what world you're in. If you feel for me sometimes, I have felt I'm in the wrong room. It's like an emotion. It has nothing to do with where the physical person is. I could be anywhere, but there's been some moments where I felt, okay, this is not a moment where I require to exist in, or this is not a moment that's calling me forth, Some moments call you forth. Some moments you're like, okay, karma has decided to enter the linguistic simulation. No, sorry, not linguistic, the idea of life. That means there are people who ride horses and then they speak about it. And there are people who, in some sense, haven't ridden a horse, but they speak about it. Now, imagine there was a horse you could ride. And this horse was not physical. This horse was how your whole moment was being. And imagine that, and the unknown witness could ride the whole moment, then the content inside it. I feel that's what love does. Love can only happen, love is an out-of-body force. It is literally emergence. Love is revelation. I feel another algorithm that individuals can implement to kind of move towards this, beyond the trust issues of the species, and towards a more global platform. Is that the person reduces everything to design. This is not for everyone. If you can find an intuitive path of love, I would say that's perhaps superior. This is just an approach I'm saying where you can take any moment to design. So think of it this way. Imagine you were watching a horror movie and you suddenly turned off the volume. You turned off the movie of the horror film. Suddenly your emotions will come back. The sound of the horror film goes away. Your eyes can't recreate the sound of it, can't imagine the sound of the film. Do you know? So because your eyes can't imagine the sound of the film, it's as if you're seeing literally the film behind the screen. Behind glass. But the silence as well. So when you mute the TV, it's literally like you're in a glass room and the TV's outside of the glass room. You know? So, and then you're seeing it, for example. So now, let's say the person muted the TV. That's what I mean by kinda in any moment where you exist, it's the birthright of the human being to look at existence. So in any moment in your life, you could look at the design of things. That's permitted. That's freedom of sight. That means before you can have freedom of speech and freedom of thought, you need to have freedom of sight. And freedom of sight really is the establishing of these greater rivers of trust that will eventually find the oceanic advanced civilization. So when you bring things down to a design level, there is no ego. People don't have egos. It's just design moving. It's just nature here. That would technically mean is like people can try it out. There's 6 viewers. So just for a moment, close your eyes and try to hear me as I'm speaking as just sound, as if I'm not saying words. You're just hearing sound, as if imagine I'm speaking a language you don't understand. You're just hearing the sounds. If people try that, write something in the chat section. If not, okay, whatever. It's something easy. Everybody can do. So what it is that the moment you notice it is sound, then you have to become curious what is causing the generation of meaning. So it's not that there's only life here and that's a mystery, but how is life being alive is also as profound. The religious algorithm has considered a breaking of the design dimension. In certain Abrahamic texts, there is this is that the sky during the apocalypse cracks. There was that sort of, dare I say, verbiage, you know, where the sky cracks, the sky breaks, like as if, like, imagine a simulation crumbling, you know. So I thought, as if, like, could the religious apocalypse be an archetype for the breaking of the simulation? You know, this whole thing people are saying awakening, awakening, could it be just the archaic revival of that idea again? You know, and you can say it's hilarious. It's like there's an outer realm breaking of the simulation, and there's an inner realm breaking of the simulation. So technically, it's like if there's an inner apocalypse before the outer apocalypse, do you know there is no apocalypse? If there's an outer apocalypse before the inner apocalypse, there's an apocalypse. And what I mean by the inner apocalypse, I mean that moment when you realize you're not a thought. Simple as that. That means you realize you are watching your memories when you remember something. There's a space. There's a space between, and believe it or not, for me, I don't know how people see it. When I've noticed it, memories move. Literally, they spatially can give the feeling they are moving. So imagine, like, in another dimension, there was a bunch of advanced, like, technological devices hovering in the air around you, right? You know? And so you don't see that dimension, and you're like, oh my god, I'm working with energy, yay. Can you imagine, like, Tai Chi masters are slowly, those people doing Tai Chi in the park, slowly moving their hand, they're slowly moving invisible, like, technological probes without realizing it. They're like, I'm moving these. Oh. It's as if nothing has ever fell. We have just arose. And if you were to fast forward, literally imagine you were looking from the sky, like from like, I don't know, a couple 100 meters in the sky, you know, and you were looking at just the earth, and you were seeing people, you know, on a very small level, and imagine somehow, like, we fast forwarded history, and the person saw literally what happened on this planet. And you would see what has happened is that literally creatures have emerged. Literally, like, creatures have emerged and stepped out of the atmosphere. It's as if the sun is calling us to itself. And this urge of the animal to seek greater light and darkness is as if, like, we want to return to the divine in the same way of, like, the memory of light returning to light. The light is a message, you know? I honestly feel sunbeams carry geometrical information. In the past, the species has had trust issues. Even now, it seems like it still does. But I'm telling you, in probably 30 years, every human being on this planet is gonna, at least those who have access to the internet, they're gonna open up to such a multidimensional landscape that no longer personality can be defined. You see, before the I think internet killed nationalism. The internet literally made access of individuals. You could be in any country, but you can online go see there's some YouTuber who's showing like how living in another country is like, you know. So literally it has become a situation where, because the information has become globalized, the personalities have become globalized. So the personalities have the potential to not just relate with a chunk of land when you are a planetary being. You know, for God's sake. Like, it's have we forgotten the planet is where we're from? You know, the whole rock, everybody, the whole rock belongs to everyone in a strange way. To every living being on it. And honestly, the prerequisite before salvation is a remembrance that whatever is going on here is. And that comfort with nature being is the true welcoming of God. Be free, find the freedom before the concept of freedom, before a conceptual satisfaction. Because a belief is a sad thing. Let me tell you why. You know, not true, direct experience of what is belief is not sad, but the belief of it is kind of sad. Do you know? Again, because it is not a change. And anything said, literally anything any human being says can be countered. Do you know? That means literally all these people trying to figure out what to say in debates, like you see it in a lot of debates going on YouTube. It's like it's like literally pretty much the ultimate question. You ask the macrocosmic questions surpass the microcosmic questions. So anytime you evoke a universal context to something that is localized, the localized idea has to remain quiet, or it has to choose to become universal. So what I'm trying to do is especially in these talks, is to say we are alive once as creatures. A lot of life is occurring. It's like an event happening, and there's a choice that has to be made. That while you're alive here, what would you like to serve? And I'm telling you, anybody who thinks of serving, then there's this quote that says you must serve before you can command. And service is giving. You're giving something from your inner realms to the outer realms. You're literally giving your energy from your inner realms to your outer realms, right? So that service is as a universal being. That means serve your civilization not as a limited ideological entity, because then you get vacuumed in by some blind desire, by some, desire agent or something. We must learn to be human beings first. And the human being is not a national entity, because nations, like everything in reality, every word we have, they are in some sense we imagined reality. And that our imagination of reality is slowed down, so we think that's truth. So it's as if it's like you are like space animating, or like a branch bringing forth various leaves. I would say when it comes to the mind's life, you know, the future generations will be like Mr. Within. You probably mean the mind's lives, right? And I'll tell you, the mind can simulate many lives. It's just about your identity. That means in the conscious moment, if the person identifies as a human being, they access human relationships. You know, that means through the filter of a human being, they relate to everything else. If the person in their inner realms gets the experience that they're their whole moment, you feel like a presence, not a personality, you get access to that which is open to your presence. So sometimes when I go into my presence, I am not to myself a personality. I am the whole moment just being here before I do anything. That's presence. It's how stillness and silence were in the room first. And when you get comfortable with stillness and silence, they are the true gates to the unknown. But you can also access that peak stillness and silence through advanced communication, and even a branch of advanced communication where I thought of it this way. I'm like, okay, so the yogis are saying that if we sit down and we renounce the outer realms, the inner realms will move enough that we will become the inner realms, right? But I'm telling you, you can access that same samadhi through advanced communication. And those people who they call, they're either, you can say the egoic construct tries to create a personality, but it's like you can communicate as a presence. So you can be a person in a moment. Then when, let's say, you're getting angry, the person gets emotional because it's a comparison to a value system from their past. So anytime you get emotional, you become technically an unconscious presence. You're not conscious of your own presence, but you're not a personality because there's a comparison between more than one memory in the moment. So more than the here and now experience, and also the memory from your past. Imagine you were pushed in childhood and then somebody came by and you just pushed them. You just push them, And it's as if, like, the explanation would be as if it was like a slingshot urge that was suddenly let go. And so, like, think of where the slingshot is held is a different dimension, and where the slingshot is pulled is a different dimension. And so if there's a left behind slingshot, of some memory, it will burst. Anytime I find myself out through, like, of course we're human beings, we make mistakes. It's like we can't act like a monkey can act like a god as much as it wants. But in a multidimensional realm, there is no claim. That means you feel a guest in this world, and you don't have to give the host a face, but you feel, okay, I am participating. It's like, think of it as if it's like an EDM concert, but on a universal. And of course, music has always been the ally of the art of the visual landscape. We are unknown instruments simultaneously played by ourselves and by the universe. That means if on the, it's like when I think about my life, it's as if I am not, if the person reaches a point where they have to pilot out of this plane, it's as if the world dies as well. You see, it's an energetic holding. It's something the energy is held. The poet Rumi says, before death comes, give away all there is to give. That means that's the value of the temporary. Service is the ultimatum. We are batteries that know that, or candles that know that the flame will go out someday. So what do we do with this flame? Do we try to usher in and a new sort of, in a very playful way, serious approach to how advanced human communication can be. I feel we can say there is advanced communication for a species if we have found if we have built an archive or giant library of various modalities of mind. Do you know that means we need to start documenting the inner realms honestly and sharing it. And if the more we do this, the more we're gifting the future. The future is going to open its eyes and be like, okay, my ancestors didn't waste time. You know. And in the past, the species always has trust issues. In the present, or I would say in the future, it can never have a trust issue. The future doesn't activate until you trust it. And so the culture of, honestly, we need to have this neo-scholar culture arise. You know, we need people all over the planet, just kids from all schools. Like, imagine it becomes the situation where children, they all around the honor school and the educational system in a strange way, and the teacher's like, oh my god, why are these kids so great? Like, doesn't make sense, something's off, you know? And then they realize the children, after the end of school, they go and they create, I called it elemental units in one talk. That means groups of 5 where you have earth, air, fire, water, wind, you know? I don't know, sorry, I'm repeating. Earth, air, fire, water, ether. These 5. These 5, I feel in the future, philosophers will gather around it. Like, literally, that's the proper unit. If you treat civilization as a sort of battlefield, you're trying to find that's a perfect. Each element suggests the nature of the person. Do you know? Anyways, the whole point is children are on their own starting their educational curriculum. Do you know? That means what I want to see is, and of course everything's become online now, but I think that's not enough. As school is a physical idea. If it doesn't have, if there is no, we need to have halls being walked in. But the issue is that it's like the economics of the world has locked down the educational ability, you know? So it's like, in one manner, it's as if like give and we'll give you then. And then there's another approach where the civilization's like, oh my god, people are temporary. Let's give them knowledge, you know? You know? And so it's as if knowledge is given, and it's as if the civilization, imagine every university on the planet becomes free, and suddenly there's a declaration. There's a declaration every university makes, you know? It's like completely free to enter this education, let's say university, but if you are worthy, there's an honor thing. There's something that if you really care to advance something, you are authorized. That means there is no financial issue. There is just an honest, authentic issue. And so the universities are just looking for the explorers of the future. That means there is no teacher, there is no student, there never was. That's a show. That's a goddamn show. You know, it has just been creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and that technically renders us as ultimately explorers. So there is no knowledge that one person can know. We're just explorers. We're all journeying in the void, for God's sake. And so, if we treat the void as a piece of paper, then we can, in some sense, write something. That's literally the coolest thing a human being can do. It's either you advance the body or you advance the communication. If we want to really advance the body, we become machines. literally. Like I can see us in the future becoming machines. You know? But if you want to advance the mind, you start experiencing life first in a fragmental way as a field. So Jungian synchronicity are non-dual moments, where you notice the inner realm and outer realms are synchronized. And that's the question. That means it's like before anybody lives in the world, ask yourself what not only you deserve, what does your species deserve? That means if you're someone, let's say, who just, I don't know, are we as a species comfortable dishonoring literally the earth we have arose from? You know? Like it's like there's something strange going on. It's as if like our belief systems are avoiding the human. A lot of major belief systems in societies. Yeah. Advancement is the ultimate word. It's literally like I would say it's a treasure. The word advancement. It's the greatest invention of the linguistic simulation. The greatest thing the linguistic simulation has done. Allowed us to navigate in a realm of first existential design, then experiential self-being, or experientially being the self. Anyways, thanks for listening. I will open it up to Q&A for 10 minutes. Anybody has a question on the topic, feel free to share. So, the music is on, meaning like anytime anyone asks a question, I'll turn on the voice. Anyways. Okay, we have a question. This must be a miracle. So Joel says, I think in some ways it would be better to move away from technology a bit. What do you think? I guess it depends on the technology, but it taking over my life right now. Okay. Okay. So here's the thing, Joel. Think of it this way, that whatever happens to us has to do with how 8 billion beings causally behave, how they cause an action in the world. So, in some sense, if the population becomes fascinated with technology only, you are unnaturally training your mind. So I notice it. I notice it anytime I'm at a computer, that I know it's like there is something going on, you know. Not just with the computer. I'm saying with my own behavioral development throughout time with a sort of relationship. Right? It's like people don't just have relationships with people. You have a relationship with everything. You have a relationship with objects around you. You have a relationship with subjects that you're familiar with. You know, you have a relationship with how you are in the moment, sitting, standing, how you're breathing. All of these are anything brought into consciousness is a relationship technically. Anything you're conscious of, you're having a relationship with. You know. I called it in something, an essay I wrote called An Evolutionary Return to Nature. And I saw it that it's something may potentially happen, that human beings are like, okay, nature, technology should not be in the driver's seat, nature should be. See, right now, technology is more interesting than nature. And it's technically what is happening is a natural consequence. It's literally like we like shiny objects. And there's nothing wrong with it, especially with ever since the internet coming. It's like access to a hidden portal. Do you know what I mean? Access to a portal or something. You know, so there is something that if we get through technology access to an information dimension that we didn't have before. So that is the allure of the technology, really, what it is showing you, and it's a sort of shortcut to experience. So it's a mini experience, it's not a major experience, right? But if we have to now try to build a civilization that focuses on the major experience, so that would be, imagine people right now caring more about technology. Imagine the reverse. Imagine we had way more. Literally, there was a revolution. People were like, hey guys, let's try it out, please. Let's try out holding phones. Let's see what it's like. And people were like, no, we want to stay at gardeners. You know, don't disturb the garden. You know, and imagine it was the opposite. Literally, governments were paying so much, you know, to have gardening technologies advanced, you know. Not even gardening technologies, just different, like, seeds were being made or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So I'm saying, it's really, you can see both kinds of civilization. You can see the reverse of it. And the reverse of it is not the best. It's not that we have to we just have to update this technological civilization through an evolutionary return to nature somehow. If we can update, because we're not lost in the like we haven't. Technology is, we're enjoying the best time of technology. One of the best times. The more technology advances, the more dangerous it becomes. So think of it this way, that we are experiencing the beginning of a system that is in our control, and just, you can imagine, in a long enough time span, things run out of control, right? So eventually there will be a lack of control with the technology. So the point is, how do we use the time that we're natural? Because eventually, eventually it will lead there until there's a complete dispatch. Imagine there's a law that says for 200 years no technological company is allowed to do anything. I mean, it's not a good thing. I'm just saying, like, I'm just saying these are just as for a philosophical mindset. We're trying to look at our human dimension in as many ways possible. Right? Literally, we're 8 billion people on an island. Yeah, 8 billion people on a cosmic, like on a rock in the middle, on an island where instead of water, it's space everywhere. So we are trying to find whatever we can really to use. You know, when we're in subjectively, I would say people are also in survival mode. Imagine like airplane mode. There's a button. You know, there's a mindset that suddenly makes you into survival mode. It's like survival mode activated. Ah, you know. So I don't know, Joel, but I think that there's so many human beings that will be born that will be the answers to a lot of these problems. But for now, the best thing we can do is check it out. If you're getting rid of trees to build a building, at least keep trees alive, either on the rooftops of those buildings, you know, or inside the building, or in some sense, we have this thing where I would say I thought about this, and I don't know how practical it is, but we found a way to build giant trees everywhere, and we slowly went from human structures to giant tree bridge homes, you know, some sort of unique kind of. Nanotechnology has work to do. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode is. Actually, there's more. So Billy says, just wants to know if you're doing a poetry tunnel on trust. So Billy wants to know if, wants a poetry tunnel on trust. I don't know what that means, poetry on trust, but like I could read poems. Yeah. If you trust the poem, it's a poetry on trust, if you know. Okay, I'm gonna read one poem. And based on how good that poem is, I'm gonna see. Alright. Okay, 1 out of 27. So, Joel, you say I sometimes agree with McKenna. I think it'd be better to return to an archaic revival. I mean, see, even though Terence McKenna said archaic revival, people said history repeats itself, right? So technically, patterns are just emerging. It's not like people are being born. Ways of things happening seem to be also echoing. So, and also, really, it's not at a point where we have to. You see, it's like we have to use what we are while we can. That's it. That's literally the task of the human being. If somehow from using what we are in whatever way we can, we build an advanced civilization, oh my god, that'd be so epic. Can you imagine? It's like humanity accidentally built an advanced civilization. Okay, so I'll read one poem, guys. Somebody's suggesting today's date, so let's read it. This is from a poetry work I wrote in 2016. And okay, there we go. Oh my god, how long is this? 4 pages. Okay, hang in there, guys. Okay. So, from the poetry work, The Only, number 13, the poem is called The Chaos That Pulls the Sage. Excuse me. A man once stood over his grave before his birth. How cruel could life be to create such a veil? In that same graveyard, an insane man was playfully running through the mist. Could this eluded being be lost within a greater truth? As observance listened, as it chose, the insane man began to speak. O beloved audience in the mist, I have spoken to some wise walls who could never give me a curved answer. The ambivalence of a kind man is the observance that is the gift of the unkind. Do not torture yourself when you never could. In the shadow of another shadow, the light may seem to be hard to find. But learn from the drop's wisdom and find the stream that carries your direction. An annihilation of all paths is a rare gift. Who has been so kind to let you walk with uncertain shoes in the monastery? If God could speak, it has already spoken. You are the traveler of your own journey, and the mountain too. Chaos was never a gift for the crew, for only the allowance of a compassionate mind may keep the hidden unhidden to you. Do not fear the mystery of the unknown, for your heart has awaited this journey from time immemorial. For all doorways have invisible doors. When kindness blooms, you have found home. Take the last step into your whole, W-H-O, capital W. Take the last step into your whole. But with a double, you guys. Okay guys, I'm going to read actually one more. It's the poem right after. It's called the eclipse at the edge of your mind. The eclipse at the edge of your mind holds many treasures. Are you satisfied by emptiness? Who is the leader of the broken? It is the only being that could ever speak. The towers of Babylon were never made by men for men. There is simply a cosmic entrance that is keeping the dam of the damned open. But do not get lost in stories of another story, for the remembrance of man in its kindest view is transparent beyond measure. You've always had invisible feet. It is that your world was kept from you, for you could not see. What is perceiving your eyes? For you could. It is that your world was kept from you, for you could not see. And then it says, what is perceiving your eyes from a new beginning? What is perceiving your eyes? That means, I would say, right now, anytime you experience something new, what is looking through your eyes? So the wonder of worlds is where excuse me. John says, was civilization as it is now planned or staged in any precise manner? Our shared history keeps us whole, and the ancient ones have already revealed the deepest mysteries. See, the mystery, you're treating the mystery like a snapshot. The mystery is a river. The mystery, John, is an unknown. You're playing a game with the unknown. The unknown is ultimately unknown, so the revelation of the mystery is the unknown. So there is no technically known solution. It's pretty much drops becoming rivers. So imagine higher truths are rivers. And what really keeps us, you say our shared history keeps us whole. Yes, the river of lives that are keeping civilization alive. Yeah. I think it's not that it's planned, but everything in nature seems to be like seeded beforehand. You know? There's something about nature where it's like its potential is already ingrained in it. But it's a really, really good question. Was civilization as it is now planned or staged in any precise manner? It can't be planned because there's new human beings who couldn't know the previous plan. So it's not planned. If you make it multidimensional, you mean God's plan? That's another thing. I don't know. Like that's your relationship with how much you want to see a face to the cosmos. For me, I would say it's just our civilization has another challenge. There was a challenge of living in nature. Now there's coming the challenge of living in artificial nature, technology, cyberspace, and whatnot. You know what's happening? It's like we're 8 billion different kind of martial artists, each human being with their own different DNA, their own different technique and style of, let's say, a martial art. And now it's like we are in a strange way somehow. The martial art has turned into groups. It's literally like there is no true martial art, you know, when it's like a copy-paste thing goes on. So the new has to come. This is why, regardless of if we consider it planned or not, new dimensions are accessible. So whether it's also your question, John, is based on whether you think novelty is destiny or not. If you think novelty is destiny, then it's all planned. You know, if you think novelty is in some sense before novelty comes first, then destiny, then it's totally different. But anyways, thanks for the question. Yeah. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And trust your species. It's the coolest game you can play. Like to build an advanced civilization, we require levels of trust, of trying things out, and also having like backup systems of forgiveness. That means we try a system and we're like, okay, we're gonna have levels of forgiveness because things may go off, you know. So with backups, oh man, I think I could be the first person thinking of forgiveness as a sort of backup system for civilization. Because you can only forgive when you realize there's an equality. If you feel you're not equal to someone, you can also make them never forgive them. You know? It's all about how gentle, how much the mind has realized there's a gentleness that you can ride the waves of. The pure lands. Pure lands are pretty much the effort is to bring the pure lands into relevance and create a bridge. You know, in Mahayana Buddhism, there was a sort of Buddhic figure, and he did something very interesting. He made an abode. He made a dimension. It was something unheard of, I would say. It's a very unique branch of Buddhist thought, but it's as if like there was an abode. That was the term for it. You know, the Pure Lands was a sort of eternal abode. Now, for me, for a long time, I was thinking, what was the implication of the Pure Lands? And the Pure Lands really, after non-duality, after states where that move beyond selfhood, there is no conditional. It's like energy has a personality in the human framework. When it moves, perhaps that it's going to be different. Leanne says, "Is cyberspace the new heaven?" Technically, yes. It's not the new. It's not around the way I'm envisioning it. It's not. We don't see that kind of cyberspace around now. But we are pioneering a world that children in the future can feel like gods in. Think of it that way. Think of it. Every person updating something online. You know, they're trying to serve some, collective intent. So it can be, yeah, cyberspace is, yeah, and I would say, yeah, it's the archaic revival of the spirit realm, but in a sensory, artificial way. So we had in, for example, religious thought, the idea of demons who don't have souls, you know, and then you're gonna have creatures in cyberspace that are not natural. So imagine in the future, children go to a cyberspace school. The 3 children, imagine, go into that school. 3 children are from the natural world going into a cyberspace world. Now imagine these 3 children go to a classroom where there's 3 other children, or whatever number, you know. And so these children are all sitting in the classroom. Only 3 of them have souls, technically are natural before being in the simulation. Do you see what I mean? So all those fake cyberspace children in the classroom, in the cyberspace heaven, in the cyberspace, they are like the idea of the demon that doesn't have soul, you know? A creature of the illusion, in some sense, right? But these are ideas, these are archetypes, these are just like, think of it, people have had an alphabet of, like literally like an alphabet for language they have had to get familiar with. So imagine now you have an alphabet of imagery, an alphabet of modes of how the world has occurred. So yeah, interesting questions, guys. Interesting questions. It's kind of like, Leanne, what you're saying in the chat section is similar to when Friedrich Nietzsche said God is dead and man killed him. So from a psychological view, technically man stopped believing in God, but he didn't stop believing in himself as a God. Do you see? So the same subconscious urge is echoing through the self. So there is no God, self is God. You see, but the idea of God it's become one of those things where it's just the experience of it is the reality of it. You know. And so in polytheistic traditions, they have a different route to one truth, you know, because technically the gods in polytheism, they all are in one god stream. Vedic thought is so next level, you know. It's like I remember turning the page and it was like something like 54 million years. It's like three days of like the Godhead dreaming. And I was like, okay. One of those intense, like, all right, something. I could see a fractal thing going on here. Yeah. But anyways, we have to trust the world if we want to live in it. Anything we want to move, we gotta trust. So if we have to move to design an advanced civilization, we have to trust. But we can trust and also recalibrate. You know, that's the thing. The inner realms. I think that's truly a free being, a being that in the outer realms, they are in some sense, I've noticed the unknown watcher, and also in the inner realms, I've noticed the unknown watcher. Pretty much like two lines connected at the same point. That point is the unknown watcher, the unknown witness. So when we realize we are energy and attention, and we can rhythmically activate the species, then the great dreams and ambitions will find us. You know, it's like we have to build literally the idea of legend was attempting the unfathomable in some sense. So we are right now, if we can turn literally like the pancake turn an inefficient civilization into an efficient civilization, we will be written in legend. You know, we will be the human beings that did something quickly. That means all those people who potentially could be hearing this talk from some power positions in the world, you can make yourself go into legend if you just care for the collective. You know, that means I feel that in some sense, can you imagine if it was the case where in a capitalistic system, kind of like as people go on this hierarchy of wealth, and they eventually become like, we have incredibly wealthy philanthropists and whatnot. So I think it should be this idea that in some sense it's as if like it's like we're all one species. Technically, abundance must have the intent to guard the species. You know, so I'm kind of saying like a sort of guardian angel system. I shouldn't say guardian angel system, but I should say some sort of I mean, the ultimate goal is to transition from currency and bring forth a skillful civilization. You know, because people, they don't realize that their work is an activity. So let's say if you are any kind of work you do that let's say if you're a person where your work is not in the creative domain, it's let's say just repeat, you're literally training every day. You know? So it's as if that training is not per se by the free will of the person choosing, right? I would say it would just be proper skill application, and it's really hard to tell, but I'm saying like a system where if the system like a cup overfills, that which falls past the brim of the cup can be used to preserve the cup. That means the issue is not just even solving world hunger or world thirst or whatnot, you know, or just shelter. It's like after people have their physiological needs satisfied, what then? It's the psychological needs, as Maslow suggests. So the psychological needs of the species is really important. And so that's what's happening. I find we are learning to care for the mind, the emergence of the greater mind of our species. Rumi says, be living poetry. Namaste.